Alright guys, so as you can see we've got another three-way battle going on here. This one's a little bit different to the last one though, as this watch was actually sent to me by a subscriber. He very generously lent me it so I could do this video, and he's also lent me this one as well. So the review of that will be coming up not long after this one. So massive thank you to John, really appreciate it. So before we get down into this review, comparison, I'm just going to quickly mention one thing. A few people have been talking about this, saying, what is that on your wrist? It's actually a fitness tracker. It's not a smartwatch, don't worry. I don't wear my watch on this wrist, I wear it on this wrist. And today, as you can see, I'm wearing my, I'm going to say Roland, I think that's right, Aqua Timer Homage. Still really loving this one. If you haven't seen a video, check it out up there. But the reason I don't normally have a watch on when I'm doing these reviews is because I've normally had the one on that I'm reviewing. With this one, I decided to wear a watch because I did have one of these three on at the time. But thought I'd quickly mix it up a bit, add that in, just to let people know that I do actually wear watches. I'm not just reviewing them, I do wear them. So now that's out of the way, let's get into this video and talk about what makes this special. So like I say, this was lent in by John, very generously. And this actually is his 21-year-old SKX. On the Jubilee bracelet, as you can see. So because he kindly lent this in, I thought I would do a comparison between this and the Steeldive and Heimdallr SKX Homages. And obviously this isn't the most up-to-date Seiko SKX, so it's not going to be that fair a comparison really. But I thought it'd be a bit of fun, just to see what the differences are and what kind of upgrades you can get with the newer versions of these Homages in comparison. So let's get down into it. So first off, the first thing I noticed is this Jubilee bracelet is really flexible. It's actually a lot more flexible than the other two, which I wasn't expecting, to be honest. So as you can see, only a little bit of flex in that one. And the Heimdallr is pretty much the same. A little bit of flex, but nowhere near as much as Seiko. So that was the first thing I noticed. So really comfortable on wrist actually, I do have to admit. Next thing is this clasp. So obviously with it being a Seiko and it being the lower end, it's only a pressed one. Not the best, obviously. But that being said, the Steeldive did actually come with a pressed one as well. If you haven't seen the video for that, I'm not going to go into massive detail on these two because I've already done reviews of them, but I'll leave the links up here. But with this one, I've actually swapped it out since for one that I got on AliExpress. So it's now a milled one. Before, it was the same kind of shell, but just with a pressed element in the middle. I think that only cost about 7 or 8 quid to upgrade, so nice upgrade. As for the Heimdallr, this actually comes as standard with a milled clasp and also a nice signed one as well, which is always a nice touch. So you don't have to pay any extra to get that on this one. Actually, well, I've got that open. Just quickly talk about the end links. So as you can see on this one, on the Heimdallr, they're solid end links. Pop that down for a second. The Steeldive is hollow end links. And with the SKX, the Seiko, with it being an older watch, and Seiko, that's also got hollow end links, but they are different to the one on the Steeldive. If I can see if I can do this. So as you can see, they're a different kind of style of hollow end links. So the Steeldive ones do kind of look a bit more like they're solid, but you don't get as much rattle as you do with this one. I'd say it was slightly better fitted. So another one of the differences, if I quickly zoom in, as you can see, because this is a 21-year-old watch and it's a Seiko, it's only got hard legs, so it's actually got a few, well, quite a few scratches on there now. Obviously the other two aren't as old, but because they're sapphire, they're not scratching at all. So zoom in again. Got no scratches on there at all. Obviously, again, like I say, it's not been worn anywhere near as much, not as old, but with it being sapphire, it should last a lot better, a lot longer. And the same with the Heimdallr. So it's a nice upgrade to have again. In fact, while we've got that here, another thing, the bezel inserts are different. So this one is actually a ceramic bezel insert. So again, should be a bit tougher. Steeldive is also a ceramic one. And then obviously the Seiko, with it being the older watch, that's just an aluminium one. But it has actually been holding up pretty well by the look of it. Can't see any obvious marks on it. So, pretty good. So, when it comes to the bezel itself, the actual action, I'll quickly show you this one. So, as you can hear, there's not really any kind of clicking at this, but it is solid enough. So, that's always good. It's not really like any other bezel I've had on any watch, to be honest, but it works well, and surprisingly enough, for a Seiko, it actually lines up perfectly, which is always good to see. As for the Steeldive, that's got a more distinct, more usual, as you probably expect, clicking. No play in it, but it is ever so slightly misaligned, but it really is ever so slight, so I can deal with that, it's not too big a deal. Now with the Heimdallr, this one I'm really not a fan of, to be honest. It feels kind of ratchety, just doesn't feel nice to operate. But it does line up perfectly, which is good. And there's no play in it really. Tiny little bit forward, but none back. So out of the three, I'd probably say the Steeldive has the best bezel action, although it is slightly misaligned. So when it comes to the movements in these, obviously there's quite a bit of difference. As you can see with these two, one's got a day-date function, one's just got the date. So that's because this one's got the NH35, this one's got the NH36. And the Seiko actually has the 7S26. I hope that's right. I think that's right. I think it actually says it on the dial. For zoom in. Yeah, there we go. Right at the bottom by the 6. And while we're zoomed in as well, as you can see, this has got 200 meters water resistance. As does the Steeldive. And so does the Heimdallr. With the movement differences, so these two are actually hacking and hand winding because they're newer Seiko movements. With this one, with it being an older movement, it doesn't hack or hand wind, so you have to do what is referred to as the Seiko shuffle, where you've got to shake it to get it going. But it seems to work well enough. When I've been wearing it, not had any issues, so not too big a deal. Obviously, if you want to get a really accurate time, it's going to be a bit more awkward. But with it being an older watch again, not massively important. So now, let's talk about the measurement differences on these. So I'm going to do this the same way I did the other three-way comparison one. I'm not going to do the actual measurements on screen, I'm just going to talk about them, and I'll probably put a chart up at the bottom. Well, somewhere on screen anyway. As you can see, when it comes to thickness, they're all fairly similar, but the Steeldive is actually surprisingly slightly slimmer than the other two, with the Seiko and the Heimdallr being basically the same. They're all more or less the same diameter, but I was slightly surprised to see that the Seiko is slightly wider. And I think that is partly down to this case. So, if I can get this to show up, as you can see, it does kind of curve ever so slightly past the bezel. So it does protrude slightly past it. Whereas the other two don't really have that. They're more flush. They don't stick out, they're just flush with the bezel. So I think that's where that extra 0.5mm is coming from. So I was quite surprised to see that. As you can see, they're all 22mm lug width. When it comes to lug though, we have got a little interesting difference with the Heimdallr in particular. So the Seiko and the Steeldive are practically identical. The Heimdallr is when you're measuring the case, but if you take into account the bracelet, it does actually protrude slightly past. It doesn't come straight down. Whereas the Steeldive, as you can see, comes straight down. If I hold it like that, you'll probably see better. Yeah, there we go. So they're dropping straight down. That is just curving around slightly before it drops down. So that accounts for that ever so slight difference. So it will wear ever so slightly larger on wrist than the other two, but not enough to be significant really. And again, with the Seiko, that drops straight down as well. And I think with them being hollow links, that probably helps, because it just seems to drop straight down from that, with having that hollow bit in the centre. It's not knocking against anything else. So now, let's compare the lume on these. Again, don't forget that this watch is actually 21 years old, so the lume's probably going to have degraded slightly. So just bear that in mind. Again, this isn't the newest SKX from Seiko, this is an older one. But again, just interesting to see what you're going to get. So let's charge them up, give them a proper chance. And there we go. So as you can see, the Heimdallr is initially quite a bit brighter. Then I'd say it was probably the Steeldive and then the Seiko bringing up the rear. But as you can see, the lume pip on the Steeldive has pretty much gone completely already. So that's not great if you're going to be using this diving. So you're probably not going to want to use that one. But I am pleasantly surprised though, considering this Seiko is 21 years old, the lume is held up surprisingly well. But again, just bear in mind that the lume pip on the Steeldive is gone, so that's not ideal. Perhaps that's a QC issue, or I don't really know, they might all be like that. I do actually have a couple of QC issues with that Steeldive, to be honest. But again, I'm not going to go into detail on that, just check out the full review if you're interested. Usable lume wise, all three, pretty good, bar that lume pip issue on the Steeldive. So that's pretty much it for this one, guys. I know this wasn't really a battle, I didn't say it was a battle to begin with like the other one. This was just a bit of fun, bit of a comparison, see what you get with an old original Seiko versus a couple of homages. Hopefully you found it interesting. If you've got any issues with the way I did this, leave comments down below. And hopefully I can improve if I do similar videos in future. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.